What's going on in the news, Harriet?
Hello, thank you for having me back again. I will go very quickly. I'm really sorry if I had been doing this, as I might have done once or twice before, last minute. I would have made the whole thing football themed, but I was a bit ahead this week, so it's not. But I do have an extra one to put in at the end. So first of all, there's a really lovely piece going on at the moment around women's networks coming together to call for tech giants to prioritize online safety. So if you have ever had an article published, if you've ever been featured in a video that went out on your firm's social media, you might have experienced some of the joy of being a woman online, to put it sarcastically. But there is a really fantastic survey which is on this link, calling for people like Facebook, Twitter, Apple to really think about how we can prioritize online safety, because we know that women do experience significantly more abuse and harassment online. And this is one way to start to address that. Interesting piece here on recruitment practices can cut technology gender pay gap in half. So this is looking at AI and how we use AI. Now, there have been a lot of studies showing the kind of flaws in AI when it comes to recruitment. So essentially, if you like recruiting one type of person, the AI will pick up on that and it'll just help you recruit more of that type of person. But what's happening now is there are companies out there starting to use artificial intelligence to actually adjust the recruitment behaviors. So actually start to gear people's responses, to start to notice where bias is creeping in, and actually helping you to eliminate bias within your own organization. Next thing here is a little bit about the gender pay gap reporting. I'm actually going to link two of these together. So unsurprisingly, the UK companies reporting their gender pay gap, the number of them has dropped. This is because back in March, the government said, do you know what, I know we made it mandatory, but everyone's had a tough year, so it doesn't really matter, it's okay, you don't have to do it. What I would say is that the organisations that have done it, this is a really fantastic moment to gain some good PR, even if your gender pay gap feels a little bit too big. This is the moment to shout about the fact that you are at least still monitoring it and you do still care about it. And I think it's only going to become more important as we move to perhaps different styles of working. So if an organisation is looking at moving to more of a hybrid working model, if you are not monitoring your gender pay gap and if you're not mapping that against where people work, what you're almost going to certainly find is that people in the office will probably end up being paid more, and people who are not in the office will end up down the further end of the pay scale. And so we need to monitor that, map it, and make sure that it is not then bringing the gender pay gap into an even wider space. And while we're doing that, we should also be mapping the ethnic pay gap. This is still not mandatory, even though people have been calling for it for the last few years. It's not mandatory. Companies don't have to do it. They absolutely should. If you've got all the systems in place to be monitoring your gender pay gap, there is no reason why you can't also do it for ethnicity. And we know, particularly for women of colour, that pay gap is even bigger. So unless we start talking about that and we start monitoring it and being open about it, it's not going to change. So we've got to focus on it. Going back up one, half of women reported unwanted sexual behaviour at work. This is from YouGov. I actually think this number is down on the last time we did a really big survey like this. But I think it's this one, it says 51%. I think we all know that there is a level of unwanted sexual behaviour at work if you're a woman in the workplace. I think perhaps lots of us thought that working from home for a year might have brought that down, but actually what we've seen is that instead what it's allowed is things like Slack, WhatsApp, email to be forms of communication with people that perhaps women thought, okay, well, I'm not going to be in the same office with them, so it'll be easier. And that's not the case. There was a really amazing article actually published by a friend of mine called Zoe Skayman. She works in the advertising industry. She published it at the end of last week, talking about sexual harassment in the ad industry that has kind of unleashed this whole kind of wave of fury towards it, and a really powerful statement from senior women's organizations in the ad industry about how they will not tolerate it anymore. And one of the things they said they will not tolerate is NDAs. And if your company has a lot of NDAs, it might be time to start thinking about whether or not that is something you wish to continue with, because it's getting a lot of flack. How to create LGBTQ plus inclusion in the workplace, just a really nice guide. I thought, obviously we're in July now, but June was Pride Month. So some great examples of ways you can do that here. This made me laugh. I think we've all seen this article in the last month. It kind of went a bit viral. Women in the workplace being held back by mediocre male managers. I'm sorry, Ipsos, this does not go with your don't blame the men theme. But essentially what this says is, you might have heard this referred to as the Peter Principle, I think it is, which is that men tend to be promoted one level above their competence level, and the Paula Principle, which is that women tend to stop one level below their competence level. And I just, on a personal note, I'm going to be totally honest with you, on my LinkedIn in the last month or so, I have seen a lot of men that I have worked with at points in my career announcing that they have got CEO jobs, COO jobs, board positions, and they are known. They are known for being lovely, but very average men. And I'm not seeing it from any of the truly incredible women that I worked with at that time. So I just ask you to take a little bit of a look around and think about how you are monitoring and measuring progress. Switch to more home working will make gender inequality worse. Do you know what? I've thrown this in. Usually I have another one which says it will make it better. It's going back and forth, back and forth. Nobody has the answer right now. If you are talking about hybrid working in your organization and you've got some questions, please do come and talk to me, because I'm talking to lots of companies about it at the moment. But we don't know right now what's going to happen because nobody's done it fully. However, what the kind of stats are skewing towards is that the people that have found home working hardest inevitably have been middle manager mothers, because they are being hit from all sides. So thinking about how we can ensure that actually home working does work for all of us and it's not something that perpetuates inequality, I just think that would be amazing. If we could spend maybe like August and September thinking about that, starting launching new programs in October, November, and then committing to what you're actually doing in January, that would be a fantastic way to change your working practices. Office re-entry is proving trickier than last year's exit. I think this is from The Economist, if I remember rightly. Very just an interesting piece on how quickly everyone left the office when they were told to, understandably, but also how difficult it is going to be to get people to come back full time, and some of the reasons for that. So if your senior management team are struggling, particularly with perhaps younger generations who haven't had their full vaccinations yet, who are perhaps pushing back against wanting to come back to the office full time, and that's what your senior management team want, it's probably worth having a read of that to try and understand some of the dynamics that are going on below it. Women with childcare needs are 32% less likely to leave their job if they can work remotely. Hurrah! So that wonderful way of stopping women falling completely out of the workforce could be there if we can work remotely, but as we see above, we could have promotion prospects if we're not monitoring it. And finally, I did throw this one in for a laugh because the headline is so ridiculous and it got pulled apart on Twitter. It's still going on Twitter if you want to go and add your own tuppence worth to it. Women shy away from senior finance careers. I don't need to say anything more about that, do I? I will leave it there. The one thing I was going to add was, if you are on the FT in the last couple of days, you might have seen an article about Gareth Southgate's leadership style, which referred to him as deep woke. Now, I suspect that most of the senior leadership team, your senior leadership team, probably read the FT. So they might have also been wondering whether or not perhaps Gareth's leadership style is in fact deep woke, and should they be worried by it? If they are, I would urge them to read Caitlin Moran's Celebrity Watch column in The Times, where she points out that having a woke leadership has in fact produced the most successful team we've seen in 50 years. So I think it works. Thank you.